showing a premiere of MachFive 3. MachFive 3 is the universal sampler from MOTU. MachFive 3 is a sample playback engine. It ships with over 32 gigabytes of included sample content. MachFive 3 opens all of the major sample library formats. MachFive 3 runs on Macintosh and Windows as either a standalone application or a plugin. All plugin formats are supported. In addition to being able to use MachFive 3 as a sample playback machine, it can also be used as a sound design tool. You can make your own instruments. MachFive 3 introduces powerful new scripting technology for performance of these instruments. If you are into doing your own sound design, working with your own instruments, MachFive 3 provides a resizable window, searchable browser, full screen editor with unlimited undo. And MachFive 3 is more than just a sampler. MachFive 3 is also a synthesizer. It includes a modular synthesis architecture with 11 different synthesis engines. So this means that the sounds that you can create and play inside MachFive 3 can be sample-based instruments, they can be synthetic instruments, or they can be hybrids of samples and synthesizers. Let's take a look. Here's the MachFive 3 window. The first thing I'm going to do is make that window a little bigger. I can just stretch it out, resize it. I can change the proportion of the cells inside the MachFive 3 window, which means that I can set up the interface to work the way that I want to work. We're going to go on a quick tour here, starting from left to right. This is the parts view. MachFive 3 allows you to load in unlimited parts, and you can see that we've got a part up in the top here. We can set the incoming MIDI channel, octave transposition, semitone transposition, and we can select what outputs from MachFive this particular instrument is being routed through. You've also got mute and solo switches. Now this is a large, complex instrument that is currently loaded into the first part, and if we go to the next button, which is the tree view, it shows us the contents of the selected part. So we can see that in this instrument we have a script processor, we have effects devices, and we have sample layers. Within each of these sample layers we then have multiple samples, and if we dig all the way down into there, we can now click on a single sample. We see this displayed. We have an inspector window at the bottom that shows us information about the sample. The next button shows us the list view. This is another way of looking at the contents of this large instrument. For example, we can color code the key groups and the layers, so we'll make this as easy as possible to work with if you're creating or customizing instruments. Now we're going to take a look at the Preferences menu. I can have resizable window presets. If I go into this part of the menu, this is where I set up my sample streaming preferences, my sound bank library locations. This is where I can set up open sound control. MachFive 3 supports the open sound control protocol. This allows me to control any parameter of MachFive 3 remotely from any application that supports the open sound control protocol. Here we have the mixer button. This shows us a mixer with our parts, our effects returns, and our master fader. This button shows us the performance view. This is where we set up keyboard ranges, velocity ranges, and key switches to switch between the different presets in MachFive. Now I can go to the editing area. I can further customize that view. If I'd like to zoom in and see just the sample editor, or perhaps just the key map editor, makes it very easy to get around inside MachFive 3. Here's a view of the effects that are currently loaded to this preset. And this button shows us the scripting technology. Now, scripting technology is pieces of code embedded in the instrument preset that affects what happens to the incoming MIDI information, what happens to the outgoing audio playback. To demonstrate this scripting technology, I'm going to introduce Matt Vanicaro. Matt's going to help us out, and the first thing that Matt's going to do is play a little bit on his Telecaster guitar. We're going to start off by listening to a real guitar. Now what Matt is doing involves open strings, fretted notes, upstrokes, downstrokes, and strums. Many different things are going into that simple guitar pattern. So if we want to play a guitar using a sample playback engine, we need to be able to emulate all of those techniques. That's what's going on with the scripting inside MachFive version 3. explain what you're doing, please?
Absolutely, Dave. What I've got here is basically, it's kind of a new way to play using the script to interpret what is going on. If I play the chord in my left hand, you'll hear that the notes don't actually sound. The script is emulating what you're doing on a guitar, like you're putting your fingers on those frets. So if you look here, it's analyzing the chord that I'm playing. I'm playing an E7 over D. And the really cool thing is that MachFive is smart enough to know that on standard tuning, the D is not playable on the bottom E string unless you have unnaturally long fingers. So what MachFive does is it puts the 7th of the chord, it puts that D in the middle of the chord to make it more authentic to what it would really sound like on a guitar. So in addition to just having these amazing samples of the notes, MachFive 3 does one step further and actually dynamically changes and inverts what I'm playing to make it sound much more authentic to a regular guitar. So now I control the strings with my right hand. So I play the chord and I can actually strum individual strings. So I can play real patterns on the guitar. Or I can use the strum buttons, and if you look, you'll see the pick animation going. It actually does alternate strumming. It'll strum down and up and strum it in the proper order. And I can mute. Dave can actually adjust the strum speed as well. So if I wanted to arpeggiate it a little more slowly, I can do that, or we can go really fast and put it back into a normal down-up mute type strum.
So what we have done in this preset is we've sampled every open string of the guitar, we've sampled every fretted string of the guitar, we've sampled upstrokes, we've sampled downstrokes, and we've sampled strum patterns. So this means that this is a very large preset. It's got over 120 sample layers to get all of the nuances of what we can do for this guitar performance. We can even do such things as set a capo on the neck and get the correct fingering of the notes based on a capo position. Let's check out another preset. Let's bring in a drum set and let's show off the scripting technology for MachFive version 3 and how that can be applied to sample drums. The first thing that we'll want to do is map out the incoming MIDI notes to the correct drums, and the scripting technology allows us to have remap presets or even to use a MIDI learn function so that we can remap any incoming MIDI note to whichever drum we'd like to select. Now that we've done that, we're looking at what appears to be a mixer, and that's exactly what it is. We're going to start with the bass drum. I'm going to turn down 2 of those mixer faders. And what you're hearing is a sample based on a microphone that is right next to the drum, a close mic. Now this next slider brings in a different microphone position. And the third slider brings in the drum overheads. So on the kick drum alone, we have 3 sample layers representing 3 different microphone positions, and you can blend them at any time. But there's more to it than just using layers for different microphone positions. We're also using something called round-robin sampling. And what that means is that every time Matt hits a key on the keyboard, it's a different set of samples that are being triggered. Now this is very important with an instrument such as the ride cymbal, because as you know as a drummer, every time you hit the ride cymbal, it sounds a little different. And MachFive 3 does the same job. Every time we trigger a ride cymbal, we get a different set of samples for maximum realism. We have 3 microphones set up for the snare drum. We have 3 microphones on each of the tom-toms. We have close mic and distance mics on the hi-hats, and this gives you very expressive control of this drum set through the scripting of MachFive version 3. All right, we have one more preset that we're going to show you that shows off this new technology, and we're going to load up an upright bass. Now this sampled instrument that we're loading in is actually a 6 gigabyte sampled instrument. There are a total of 6 gigabytes of samples involved in making this single instrument. But of course, we don't have to load 6 gigabytes of samples into RAM because MachFive 3 supports sample streaming technology. We have 3 sound sources on the upright bass, and we're starting off with the piezo pickup on the bridge. Now what I'll do is I'll bring in the body mic, and I can bring in the overhead mics. Think about this, you can blend the miking of the instrument while you're doing your final mix down. Right now what we're hearing is Matt playing a plucked sound, but of course if we want to slap the upright bass, we could do that as well.
One of the great things about that is that I can trigger the slap with a key switch. So rather than having to stop what I'm doing, turn, and change an option, I can play and start out no slap. And when I hit a phrase that I want slap to happen, I can just turn it on from the keyboard without having to stop what I'm doing.
Matt, can you explain the legato function, please?
Absolutely. There's a few different modes for legato, and it works similarly in the Telematic preset, which you saw before. Right there, Dave's got a legato number that he can set. He's got it set to 4 half steps. So what's that mean? That means is that anytime I play a note within 4 half steps of another note, it'll actually trigger a legato slide sample. A sample of a bass player plucking a note and then sliding to the next note. So if I play outside of it, you don't hear it, but if I play within that range, you'll hear it slide up. So if I put it on legato slide, it slides from one note right to the next note. And if we did that with the Telematic, it would actually trigger a hammer-on sample. So you get very, very authentic performances. Everything about this is so authentic. It triggers hammer-ons and slides, legatos, all those different things, and you can trigger it all from the keyboard without having to stop what you're doing. This is something that previously, if you wanted to do something like this in your film work, you'd have to have 3 or 4, or 5 different instances of the virtual instrument up. I'd actually have to have a track of slap bass, and then a track of legato bass, and a track of sliding, bass noises. But now you can do it all on one track, and you can trigger it all as you're playing. It's much more authentic, much more realistic.
Okay, we've got one more thing that we're going to show you in this demonstration. We've loaded in a number of sample presets. I'm going to empty this out now. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up to the Preferences menu and I'm going to load a performance. And a performance is not just loading a single instrument, but a performance is loading the entire MachFive interface. So what we've loaded in here are 4 different instruments. This is an organ, this is a grand piano, and we have 2 synthesizers that we've loaded in. MachFive 3 supports sample playback, but MachFive 3 is also a very sophisticated synthesizer. We've got these 4 instruments loaded in, and in order to be able to switch between them for live performance, click on the Performance button, and you see that this performance loaded in key switches. So what Matt can do is he can use key switches to switch between the sounds. Here's a synthesizer. Now by pressing a key switch we can have the Hammond organ. Another key switch gives us the grand piano. And yet a 4th key switch gives us another synthesizer. This is MachFive 3, the universal sampler from MOTU.